righty. First of all, welcome to ScottCast, the podcast number 19, I've been told. We'll verify that later with our fact checker, Vin. But today, I have David Bilka with me. And David is a financial advisor here in Central Florida. He does a lot of business in Lake County. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And Orange.
And Orange. He doesn't discriminate. He'll go anywhere. And David, I think this conversation is kind of interesting because you actually, not only are you a financial advisor, but you're an educator. First of all, Correct. You used to be an educator exclusively, but now you're kind of a hybrid model. You're a financial advisor first and foremost, and really that is your occupation. But what is fascinating about you is you actually teach financial advisors, number one, to become financial advisors, yes?
Yes, I teach in UCF's CFP program.
Beautiful. So you're teaching the teachers.
Right.
And then I think even more interesting than that is that you hold classes at UCF and people come out to learn about financial planning. So you're kind of giving back to the community at large on financial planning because everybody doesn't have $100,000 or $1 million to give someone like you. And you're willing to educate those people so they get to the point, hopefully, where they have those kind of assets. So what I thought, I made myself a little list here.
Sure.
I have some questions and some things that I'd like to talk about with you, kind of share with the audience and share with people out in podcast land and, of course, Vinny. So, one of the things you've talked to me about and you've kind of expressed to me is that when somebody's starting out and they don't really know where they're going, they don't know a mutual fund from an ETF, from a stock, from a hole in the wall.
Right.
What are some of the beginning things? And I've made a little bit of a list you had given me preliminary, like cash reserve. Talk to me about cash reserve.
Yeah, if I could step back for a sec.
Sure.
So, as I was a high school teacher for 16 years, and I'm friends with a lot of my former students on Facebook and all that great stuff, and enjoy. A lot of them are professionals now. They're doctors, they're physical therapists, lawyers. They're very successful. They were motivated students and they were motivated professionals. And they often get questions from them, hey, just starting off, got my first kid, have a decent income, not sure what to do. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Or I get it from clients where, hey, my son or daughter just started at Lockheed or something or started somewhere. Can you give them some direction? And so that's kind of get those kind of questions frequently. Yeah,
those what maybe some people think are beginner questions, but the reality is they're not beginner. First of all, you have to start somewhere, right?
Right.
And a lot of people want to run before they can walk. I find they're like, I've said before, they're like, sometimes people will say to me, well, I don't want to start saving till I can do $500 a month or $1,000 a month. 10 years later, they still can't do $500 or $1,000 a month. Meanwhile, they could have saved $100 many years ago and been far ahead of the game. You said something interesting there, which is you have clients. They're clearly financially successful, or they likely wouldn't be your clients. But then they have children. They have adult children, young adult children, or even sometimes even teenagers that they're just trying to teach. And I find it as part of your service, I think what you're saying to me is you will actually reach down generations,
sure,
even if they don't have the assets. So talk a little bit about the value of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways we can look at this. So on the one hand, we're both parents, and we can say, preach what we preach to our kids, but in the end, someone else tells them the exact same thing you've been telling them for years, and that's when they actually hear it.
Yes.
So there's value in that. Where that's happened to me often, where I'm, speaking to a client's kid, and they say, "Oh yeah, mom or dad used to say that too," and
we didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then also part of it is when I have found when the kids are involved, at least somewhat knowledgeable what their parents are doing, when life happens, when mom or dad gets sick or mom and dad passes away, then they're in the loop. They know what's happening from an earlier stage. And so if I don't have that kind of a relationship with the child or, adult child
Sure.
at this point, the first time they ever talk to me is when mom or dad is sick or mom or dad passes away, then it's a lot harder to get through.
Because there's pressure, right? Then something bad has happened. Their mind is really not on money, although it kind of has to be, and they're emotional. It's difficult to make good decisions when you're emotional.
Right, and so it can be where, hey, they have a $500,000 IRA, and that's the first time in their life, and probably most people's lives, where that amount of money comes into their lap at one time.
Right.
And so what I like to do is have those conversations before something happens. And the way it's worked in the past or present and past, is some clients only want their adult kids to know the generic part of it. Hey, I have a trust, and I have an IRA, and I have this, and I want you to walk my kids through what's going to happen when something happens to us. They don't want them to know numbers.
Yeah.
Others are, you know what, I want them to know as much as possible, and we'll sit down together or do a Zoom call now with COVID. And hey, you know what, here's what mom or dad have right now, and this is how it impacts you from a tax point of view when you inherit it, and so on and so forth. So that's, I call it a beneficiary review. It's part of being, part of what I do. There's no extra cost or anything, to that. As far as educating the next generation, we don't have financial education in our educational system. It's just not there.
Which is a crime.
It is. You think of all the stuff that we learned that we forgot the day after we took the quiz or test.
I knew you used to be a math teacher.
I was a history teacher.
History
actually,
teacher.
yes.
Okay. All right. Thank God. Because somebody tried to teach me calculus in high school. I went and played basketball. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so it's absolutely it's absent, and then what do people rely on? Well, they heard what their friend told them, their neighbor told them. There's a lot of assumptions, a lot of misinformation, and so I even use it in my own personal example, where when I was an amateur at this, and when I was a teacher, when I was an educator solely. I thought I knew something, because I read Money Magazine and talked to my dad a little bit about it. He knew some, and so I went back to school to study this for the CFP at UCF. I had a little bit of an ego. Oh, I already know this stuff, right? I actually had in my head before my first class, I'll just take these classes, but I could probably get like a 50% on the exam right now.
Right.
I thought I would.
Yeah.
And I was humbled from the first day of class. I realized I really had no idea what I was doing with my own personal finances. I thought I did, and I had no idea.
Most people do think they do. Yeah.
So what I tell my former students, or if I have a conversation, or when I have a conversation with clients, adult children, or even if they're teenagers, what have you, is number one thing, the key is spending is number one, and a really close second would be saving.
Yeah.
And we live, we're, part of being part of an abundant society is wonderful things that we have access to so much stuff, and that's cool. That's nice. It's nice to live where we live in abundance. If anyone's traveled anywhere, pretty much outside of North America and Europe, you've witnessed that we're unique in that.
Yes.
And we're blessed with that.
I think a lot of people don't know that, but yeah, it's true.
And so, whenever I do a financial plan for someone, I can already tell by what kind of spending objectives they have. You have to tell someone like me what your expected expenses are in retirement. And if I see $140,000 as their expected expenses, but they have $250,000 in assets, you already know right there it's not going to work.
It's a bad mix.
So saving and investing are the key there. As far as saving, investing, and of course spending. Example would be if you start with the basics, is you want to have a cash reserve. The CFP suggests 3 to 6 months of expenses. Perhaps COVID has taught us, a global pandemic has taught us that probably err more towards 6 months.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
The kind of pre-COVID it was, well, if you're a couple and both are working, you can go 3 months of expenses. If you're a couple and one's working and one's not, you can go 6 months. Generally, I don't know how you advise retirees. Generally, with retirees, I always say at least 6 months of expenses.
Yeah.
Well, hey, some things, life happens. We have this thing called a global pandemic. Some types of work were shut down and are still stifled.
Yep.
So perhaps, I would suggest, say, 6 months would be appropriate for any age. And so you have to have the discipline to build that up. you of course have to know what your expenses are. And in our our digital society, our credit card society, it's very easy to have no idea how much you're spending.
And let me stop you there. So what percentage of people do you think, because I have an opinion on this, what percentage of people do you think actually know what their monthly expenses are?
Very low, probably 8%. I'm thinking less than 10%.
Well, I would agree with that. Now, I think the retirees because they're on fixed incomes, tend to have a better handle on that. But even in that crowd, there's a lot of wiggle room, and I think there's it's like getting on the scale in the morning for a lot of people. They're like, I'd rather not know. Right? I know I ate 3 cheeseburgers and a hot fudge sundae last night. I'm just going to assume I'm fine. I'm not getting on the scale.
Right.
Whereas, with money, there is a tendency, when I was young, I was the same, like, I don't know, if the check doesn't bounce, I'm good, right?
Sure.
That's kind of how I viewed it when I was a young man. And I think a lot of people, that's an extreme, but I think a lot of people would rather not know. But once they cross that threshold into knowing, or at least having a better idea, I think that's when things will improve, don't you?
Yes. Oh, yes. To have it, you write it down. I mean, that's something that my wife and I, early in our marriage, we actually create a budget and we revisit it every year.
Yeah.
And early on, I mean, just we both were teachers, and then for most of our raising kids years, it was only me. So I was a teacher's income for a long time. That was a decision we made.
Sure.
And so we had to be very mindful of what we were spending. And so it also helped where, okay, we're spending this on electric bill and this and that. But hey, here's a certain money that, you know what, you do whatever you want with it, and I do whatever I want with my portion, and reduces conflict over money, which of course, that's a whole nother topic.
We could spend an hour on what that does to relationships. I mean, that's fascinating stuff, and I think there are some people that watch this and think, well, that's common sense, and did I really need to know that? The truth of the matter is most of the population does not. It's not that they don't know it, it's just a discipline, it's a push-up they don't want to do.
Right.
They don't want to put the effort into figuring that out. And I think, and I would argue, it's not because it's that hard to break out a yellow pad and write down what your expenses are and total them. Pretty sure most of us are capable of that. But it's the knowing and being forced to turn your head and look at something you may not want to see. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And then how you automatically renew your insurance policies. You automatically and it's so much easier just to renew, not shop for its competitive market.
Yeah, we all do it.
So next thing you know, hey, I was spending whatever $1,800 on my car insurance. Now I'm spending $2,500. What happened?
Right.
So
3 years later, you never looked at it. Automatically renewed. Well, I mean, I think this is fascinating stuff. And so, David, if somebody had questions, they can just call the office. And then you want to throw a number out there real quick?
Sure. Yeah. Our main office number is 352-728-6789. That's our main office number.
That's your main office number. And so this is David Bilka, and educator, former full-time educator, so teaching children. Lots of good things about history, but now teaching young people and adults alike about money and how to use it. So